Good morning, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. Welcome to Federal State Affairs. And we have just a tiny bit of housekeeping to get out of the way before we do anything else. We had a bill introduced earlier that had an incorrect RS number. It was introduced as RS 0566. As was introduced as a committee bill, but the actual number was 23 RS 0718. And so we just wanted to correct that on the record to make sure we've got that, that correct. Also, committee, you have your packets for today's confirmation hearings. Sheila will need to collect those packets afterward. Just make sure that you give those back to her, and then she'll hold those until we hold the actual vote on these conferees. Okay, before we get going, are there any bill introductions? Step forward, Patty, and give us your name and the RS number of the bill.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee. Patty Markley with Markley Strategies on behalf of the Shawnee Tribe. It is 23 RS 0212, and bill authorizes the State Historical Society to convey property located in Johnson County to the Shawnee Tribe.
Committee, any discussion or objections to introduction? Seeing none, that bill's introduced. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other bill introductions today? Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a repeat of last year legislation, RS number 0677, which is standardizing firearm safety education training on behalf of the Kansas State Rifle Association. Thank you.
Any discussion or objections to introduction? Seeing none, that is introduced. Any other bill introductions? Seeing none, we'll move on. Our next order of business is approval of minutes. Sheila sent out the minutes last week, I believe, for January 12th, 17th, 18th, and 19th for your review. And committee, any discussion on that or a motion to approve the minutes? We have a motion to approve the minutes. We have a motion from Senator Blasey. Do we have a second? Senator Reichman seconds. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay. Those minutes are approved. Next up, we will open the confirmation hearings today. We have two new appointments for confirmation, and we'll hear from both the candidates. We will vote on them next week, and so that gives you time to think about this. By the way, the job we're looking at is for the appointment to the State Civil Service Board, and the board has the power to hear appeals concerning the demotion, dismissal, or suspension of a permanent employee in the state classified service, the refusal to examine an applicant or certify a person as eligible for a job class. You know what, Jason, should I have you go over these or not necessarily? Okay. Or appeals for disciplinary action in violation of the Kansas Whistleblower Act. They meet generally once a quarter or as needed based on the number of appeals that come up. They may affirm, modify, or reverse an agency action or order any other appropriate action. They may depose witnesses and maintain records and minutes of its business and official actions. Committee, you have your packets that were distributed to you. For all you people watching online, we do not distribute these publicly because they do contain some personal information that should not be disclosed. And just a reminder, we are a paperless committee. So a lot of times you may see our committee members looking down at their laptops or whatever. That doesn't mean they're not paying attention. It just means they are reading testimony from a laptop or another source. And so with that, pardon me, I think we will bring to the mic our first appointment consideration. That's for Crystal Cryer from Congressional District 4, and she's a State Civil Service Board nominee to serve a 4-year term that expires March 15th of 2026. We have already passed the first year, so I think it'll be a 3-year, basically. We're at 2023, so it'll be a 3-year term. It's typically a 4-year term, but these appointments are just now showing up to us now. So, Crystal, thanks for being here today, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, minority member, and other members of the committee. My name is Crystal Creer, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to appear before you of my appointment to the Civil Service Board. I am a lifelong Kansas resident, and I have lived the majority of my life in the Wichita area. My education has been here in Kansas. My undergraduate degree was at Wichita State University in General Studies, and then I followed that with my law degree from Washburn Law School. The majority of my career has been in defending the citizens of the state of Kansas, both at the district court level and the federal level. I spent 20 years working for the State Board of Indigent Defense Services, which is BIDS. My career began at the Sedgwick County Public Defender's Office as an assistant public defender. After I was in that position for 3 years, I was then promoted to be a deputy public defender. In addition to representing individuals charged with felonies in district court, I also was responsible for training new assistant public defenders with their job, and I also represented the office at court dockets. In 2008, BIDS made the decision to open the Sedgwick County Conflict Office, and I had the privilege of becoming the first chief of that office. As the chief, I had the opportunity to select a staff and a location. And in addition to my responsibilities as an attorney defending clients in district court, I also oversaw the office daily operations. When I began that office, we had a staff of 4, and it increased to 7 at the time when I left. After my position as a chief, I then moved into the federal system and joined the Federal Public Defender's Office as an assistant federal defender. There, I defended citizens of Kansas in the U.S. District Court of Kansas. After gaining experience in the federal system, I began the private practice of law. I am currently a partner in the firm of Cotton & Creer. My practice is primarily in Sedgwick County, but it has expanded, and I travel to Sumner, Harper, Barber, Pratt, Kingman, Cowley, and Harvey counties to assist them with cases, because in some of those smaller counties, there is a shortage of attorneys, and so I help out where I can. I have been involved in over 75 jury trials. I have also had the opportunity to fill in as a prosecutor and a judge in some of the municipalities around the Wichita area. And I have a position with the Wichita Intervention Program where I lecture on the criminal and administrative penalties surrounding a DUI. I believe that my extensive trial experience would benefit the Civil Service Board. I know how to review and listen to the facts of a case. I can then take those facts and apply them to the law or the regulations that apply. As a member of the Civil Service Board, I would review all of the evidence that is presented. I would listen to the arguments, and I would make a fair and just decision with the other board members. I look forward to the opportunity to work on behalf of the people of Kansas as a member of the Civil Service Board. Thank you. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Crystal. Committee, do we have any questions? Senator Reichman.
Thank you very much for coming. And
Welcome.
being part of the process. And of course, us being senators, we have to go through and do through the confirmation. And I enjoyed our little talk on the phone. And I think you're very, very well qualified. I don't know why anybody would want this job, but you kind of answered that. The only question, as I went through, the only red flag that came up for me, I'd like to have you explain, says I was asked to resign from the Federal Public Defender's Office due to what I believe was a difference of opinion about the way the case would be handled. I guess my question is, would you like to discuss that or whatever? We have to decide if anyone isn't how well they're going to be make judgment on cases we don't know what they're going to be. You know, that's our job to do that. So I'd like to have you answer that. Thank you.
Senator, the reason, when I entered the Federal Public Defender's Office, I was under the belief that it was all about what the client wanted and how the client wanted to have their case handled. When I got into the office then, it wasn't so much about doing the client's wishes, which it was their case, it was more about fighting and picking a fight, for lack of a better term, with everybody. And I just didn't think that that was right, because a lot of times it compromised a client's interests because they may not want to have gone that way. And so because of that, I did not feel comfortable in that position anymore either.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Senator. Senator Falscadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Crystal. Wow, your voice, I wasn't expecting it to come out of your mouth. I love it. I heard you very well. Thank you for being here today. Your last part of your presentation, you mentioned that you would take everything under consideration and then discuss that with the other board members. Who would be the other board members, and how much of the influence from yourself would they consider in making some of those decisions? Thank you.
The only board, honestly, the only board member I've had the actual opportunity to meet is Cheryl Gilchrist. And I know her because of her involvement within the federal system. The other board members I'm not sure of. I would hope that they would take my thoughts and opinions into consideration. I know that a colleague is also up for consideration, and he is an attorney as well. And I think that together we could just bounce ideas off of one another. Oh, sorry, I was trying. And I think that we would be able to complement one another. One of the things that I think is very important is that you listen to what other people say. Because when you're hearing testimony, different people hear different things. So I think it's very important for the collective to get together and talk about it, because somebody may hear something different than what I do. And I would hope that a board like this would listen to all the members and take everybody's thoughts and opinions into consideration before making a decision.
Thank you, Senator. Any other? Senator Blasey.
Not a question, just a comment. So thank you again for your service. She's actually a constituent of mine, and grateful for your long life of service to public service and in the legal world. So I think you make an outstanding appointment, and just want to thank you for your saying yes to public service.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Crystal. We will consider your appointment next week. And we appreciate, I would like to echo Senator Blasey's response there that this is always public service is welcome, particularly in positions like this. We need people there. So thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Our next nominee is Jake Miller. He's from Congressional District 3. And Jake, welcome you up to the podium. And invite you to tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, Ranking Member, and other members of the committee. I do also want to give a special thank you to Sheila, as I was a little difficult in scheduling this, as I've been on some paternity leave and had to get some babysitters lined up. So I appreciate her working with me on this. As the chairman stated, my name is Jake Miller, and I am grateful for the opportunity to appear before you in support of my appointment for the Kansas Civil Service Board. I'm a lifelong resident of Kansas and have lived in Wyandotte County my entire life, except for the short stint that I spent in Topeka when I was attending Washburn Law University. My education background consists of an accounting degree from the University of St. Mary in Leavenworth, as well as an entrepreneurship and innovation certificate from UMKC that followed up with a law degree from Washburn University. Since graduating law school, my practice has been primarily centered around labor and employment law, beginning at Blake & Eulig, which is a small firm in Kansas City, Kansas, and leading to me opening my own firm called the Grissom Miller Law Firm in Kansas City, Missouri. In my current practice, I mainly handle all matters of litigation as well as labor and employment, as I previously mentioned. In my current practice, I have not only represented labor unions, but I've represented management. And that's important for me to note as a member of the Kansas Civil Service Board. It's your job to sit back and listen to the facts of not only the employee, but also from the state as the employer. Through my work, I have participated in many hearings, and I have spent most of my time in arbitrations and practicing before the National Labor Relations Board. I mention this because the State Civil Service Board's hearing process closely mimics those two, especially arbitrations. As a member of the Civil Service Board, I believe the most important part of the job is to be fair and impartial hearing officer. Every case is unique and shall be analyzed using their own set of facts and circumstances, giving not only the state a fair hearing, but also the employee. I believe my prior experience representing both management and workers have uniquely qualified me to be just that, fair and impartial. If confirmed, I promise to analyze each case on its own merits and to work with my colleagues in coming to the right conclusion and decision. I thank you for your time today and any consideration you've given me, and any questions you may have, I'd be happy to stand for.
Thank you, Jake. Committee, any questions? Senator Straub, then Senator Reichman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Jake. I was looking through here. Could you explain your lobbying work and how any of that or compensation for that may conflict with your job as a board member?
Very valid question. I totally understand. I actually, walking in here, thought, do I wear my lobbyist badge or not? But as an attorney, I thought, I got to be ethical. Even though I'm not here lobbying, I'm going to put it on just to be safe. So I work as the executive director of an organization called the Working Kansas Alliance. Through that, I register to be a lobbyist, but in all honesty, I testify up here maybe once or twice a year, if anything. And typically, it's a bill that needs some sort of an attorney background that I would specialize in. Working Kansas Alliance was developed in 2013 as kind of an organization for unions and non-unions. So Kansas Chiropractic Association's a member, Kansas Trial Lawyers, a lot of others. And what it was the working together on workers' compensation and workers' compensation reform. Typically, everything that I would testify on deals with workers' compensation, though there are some others, workers' rights issues. The Kansas Civil Service Board has nothing to do with workers' compensation. That's a whole different side. And nothing in my role of what I do there would even collide with the Civil Service Board. It's kind of a roundabout way of answering that, but I don't believe that there would be any conflict. If there ever was a conflict, I would remove myself and recuse myself from that hearing. The Kansas Civil Service Board allows for hearings to happen with less than the full membership, should the chair decide. I don't ever foresee that happening, but if it did, I would remove myself and recuse myself.
Follow up? Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just know from previous experience dealing with people in some of these high-level jobs, management and things, that sometimes when you have two different responsibilities, it's hard to discern when to wear which hat. So I just want to make sure that that is a concern of yours, and that you would recuse yourself from anything that might even pose even a small conflict. Thank you.
And to even in follow-up, I think I might be the cheapest lobbyist in the state when it comes to how much they pay me. I spend probably 40 to 60 hours a week practicing law and maybe 5 to 10 on anything WKA, so.
Senator Reichman?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I would like to follow up on the senator beside me. But before I do that, I did notice that your mother-in-law is Kathy Wolfmore.
Yes.
And do you like her?
She's probably watching this, so I love her dearly.
The reason why I said that I really admire her, and she was the one that really helped get my wife and the KU going on, and we've had a lot of conversations and whatever. So if you didn't like her, I wouldn't have voted for you, okay? I
No,
might not anyway, but I'm just saying I had,
It's funny, I used to work in the Capitol, and I got to know Kathy really well, but I went to high school with her daughter, and we got married after I left the Capitol, and she said, "Why did it take you guys so long?" And I said, "Because I worked for you. Had I not worked for you, she'd have liked me a lot earlier." So,
thank you. One of our, obviously, I mentioned the other candidate, is that we got to make the decision, and I take these very, very seriously, and it's a responsibility. I did notice that on here that says no more than 3 members can be of the same political party. And so I asked my senator to my right, and he said there's 5 on the board. That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. And so being registered a Democrat is not where I'm necessarily going to vote against you, okay? I have a lot of friends that are Democrats. But my concern is what the other senator said, was that when a person's actually a lobbyist, and then the idea that actually came out and supported other people running for very, very involved in the Democratic Party, it doesn't mean that you're a no vote for me, okay? But my concern is that all of our background always will play a role on any case, anything you got in there that comes up. And so I would like to be reassured, just like the question that Senator beside me asked, that the idea that when a case comes up in front of you, that you would, be as impartial as being a judge that you have in there. So it's not a very good question, but that's kind of where I'm coming from. Okay.
and I totally understand that, and I totally get that. And I don't know if this will ease any of that. I am actually replacing a Democrat on the board. So the person I am replacing, I haven't met with her. I only saw her name, but in my research, I realized she is from Piper in Wyandotte County, and I live down by KU Med. When redistricting came through, Piper got moved into the 2nd congressional district, and only half of Wyandotte County remained in the 3rd. And so through that, she was basically redistricted out of the position. And so I would be replacing an already existing Democrat on the committee only because I'm assuming she would have been reappointed. I'm not sure. I can't speak to that. But I was only basically for redistricting purposes of the new congressional maps. Some of these changes had to be made because I believe the question came of the makeup of the board. It's 5 members. There's 1 at-large member that represents the entire state, and then all the other 4 must come from a congressional district. And so being redistricted out, she obviously couldn't serve in that role anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Fasquedo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a question for the conferee for Jake. However, if staff or you, Mr. Chairman, could then explain, so if you said there's 5 members, and so then what is the requirement of, so he's, I said an at-large person, so, and then each district, congressional district, but what's the requirement for political Democrat or Republican, or is there?
It's made up just like the Public Employee Relations Board. I believe the Board of Regents is made up the same way. Per statute, there cannot be no more than 3 members of a single party. So there has to be either 3 Democrats or 3 Republicans. I guess technically, if you want to get into the legal sense, you could have an independent that would throw those numbers off. But there can be no more than 3 members of a party. And I mentioned the National Labor Relations Board. These boards are really mimicked after that, which is a federal board, and it's no more than 3 members. And it essentially is so that there's always a majority and a minority that work together on it.
Mr. Chairman, Jake, thank you for that. So what was your desire, your initial reasoning for wanting to serve in this position? And can you tell us a situation where you've had to make a decision and be fair about it of what you'd be doing in this role? Thank you.
So I honestly did not kind of push out and seek this 100%. I got kind of a follow-up and some questions after some people saying, hey, we need to fill this spot in CD3. I believe, especially with my practice in front of the NLRB and some of these others, I believe there is a huge need to have these boards to be filled and to be working the way they're meant to be working. For instance, in my practice of law, there has been some times where the NLRB was not full of membership. And when that doesn't happen, then they can't appeal because the board can't meet. And so I think that when I was asked, I 100% said I agree and I sign on because I believe that the board needs to be fair and full to meet together. Two things on the impartial piece. Since my packet's going to give you the exact date, so I'm sorry if I quote it wrong, but since 2017 or 2018, I've served on Wyandotte County's Planning and Zoning Commission. And if you guys want to see if I'm impartial, you can watch those meetings. I warn you, they're about 8 hours long, one Monday a month, and are not fun. But every month I have to make an impartial and fair decision. And I'm sure if you ask staff, staff of the Planning and Zoning Commission, I kind of go against them a lot because I ask questions for the citizens and things that weren't really brought up and pushed for. I have served on that for quite some time and made numerous decisions on that. Secondly, I also serve on the Unemployment Modernization and Improvement Council. I believe the acronym is UCMIC, which I always mess up. I've dealt with Jason on it multiple times. It's probably his favorite interim committee. But we were tasked under the unemployment changes in Kansas with building a board of legislators and non-legislators on unemployment compensation and the fraud that happened during the pandemic. And in that role, I have served with not only Senator Erickson, but Senator Olson and Representative Tarwater, and I've worked very closely with all three of them. And I believe if you ask them, they'd tell you I was fair and impartial.
Any other questions, committee? Seeing none, thank you, Jake, for also stepping up for this nomination. And we will have that, our final working on the nominees next week. So
thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
And if there's any questions between now and Tuesday or anything, I believe I provided my cell phone, and feel free to reach out.
Very good. Committee, a reminder, we do need to return your packets to Sheila before we leave the room, just to make sure that any confidential information is protected. We will be on call of chair on Monday, so no meeting on Monday. However, staff is going to meet. We're going to do a little planning for the bills coming up, just so we have a little planning, and then we'll be back on Tuesday. I plan on working these nominees on Tuesday, and we'll get our agenda out. I think we've got our agenda out for next week already. I believe that is it for today. Thank you for your work. We are adjourned.